So, hello and welcome. We're back here for another great flow conversation, and here with my good friends Steve and Saeed. And today we're going to be talking about systems thinking and why it's so important to look at the entire system. So, we were just chatting about this, and Steve shared an awesome video that both Saeed and I enjoyed. So, hey, you want to give us an overview of what you liked about that, Steve?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a little while since I watched the video, but it's Russell Ackoff, and who's kind of a legendary systems thinker, one of the kind of godfathers of systems thinking. And the title of the talk, for anyone who wants to go look it up, is if Russ Ackoff had given a TED talk, because it's about 15 minutes long or something. And what really stood out to me and kind of blew my mind was his kind of analogies about looking at the entire system and treating the system as a whole rather than the sum of its parts, right? And so the piece that really kind of stuck in my memory that I always remember, and I always will, I think, is the idea that you can't make the best car in the world by taking all the best parts of excellent cars and just smashing them together. And I think that that analogy really resonates with me, because I think a lot of organizations try to do that, right? They take little pieces from all over the place and just shove them together instead of considering, what is our system like right now? What does our system need? And so to kind of bring everybody into that analogy a little bit, what Russ was talking about is there's all these companies that do different things extremely well, right? Volvo's known for safety, Porsche's known for maybe agility, and Ferrari's known for speed. If you were to take the engine from a Ferrari and the safety features from a Volvo and the suspension from a Porsche and put them all together, you'd have kind of like this Frankenstein car that wouldn't even work because they weren't designed to work together. And they didn't sort of evolve out of the same common problems and goals. So that's kind of my read on the video. That's the thing that kind of stuck with me that I can remember even now. And I think the last time I watched the video was maybe 6 months ago, but maybe you folks have seen it more recently and have a different read.
I really enjoyed that piece too. There was another piece where he talks about the architecture of a house and how if you come to the architect, I love the way he explained this as well. It's like, because you turn up to the architects, well, I want a massive master bedroom, I want all of these washrooms, I want the garage, and
Yes.
yeah, and I want all of this, and it's going to be made out of like red oak, and it's going to cost $10,000. And the architect doesn't go and try and build out of that. The architect will start by drawing the outside of the house and then work out like what can go into that, and they'll only modify the outside of the house so as to improve the overall architecture, the overall system. And I thought that was a wonderful analogy for this problem. And because we often see this piece where we're trying to create the best possible one of these things inside of that, but not really thinking about the impact of the overall architecture. And yeah, I think that was a big piece I really enjoyed as well. I thought it was a very good video. Yeah, there was a piece actually from you were talking about that. I've seen that in an organization where they look around the organization and say, like, who's your best Unix engineer, who's your best developer over here, who's your best DBA over here. We're going to take all of them, we're going to jam them together into a team, and they're going to be the best. And it's like, no, they won't.
It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So actually, when he was talking about the house, this is sort of a weird aside, but it reminded me of The Fountainhead. So the book, and not that I'm a big Ayn Rand fan or anything like that, but the idea that the main character in the book is Howard Roark. Actually, he gets this commission for this bank, and he's going to build a bank, and they actually say, well, we want it traditional, but we want it modern, and they wanted all these contrasting things. And then he came with this design, which he was like, I'm going to build you the right bank for you. And he really didn't try and compromise everything everywhere. And they hated it, but it was a beautiful design. But because it didn't have, like, they wanted, the nice pillars or whatever that banks had and stuff. And like the whole book, I mean, I don't remember any of the long speeches from the book, but I remember all the instances where he designed something and it was right. But, people didn't look at it that way because he really looked at it from a systems point of view. So now I've connected Ant-Man with systems thinking. So I'm not sure if the whole new field
Well done.
you can think about.
This is the whole point of these conversations. That was fantastic. I think, yeah, thinking back on it now, I think a lot of what happens in architecture and in systems in business is that people have a checklist, right? And they're like, I want this, I want this, I want this. No one's thinking of the outcome. No one's thinking about, if I let a professional steer us towards the outcome.
Froze.
There's an end to that sentence. If we let a professional, I could talk about outcome mapping. Timing is everything.
Sorry, folks.
So we heard you have to steer to an outcome, and then it froze.
Oh, sorry. Well, I love that I get, like, your internet connection is unstable, like 10 seconds after everything is just ground to a halt. Yeah, I think, instead of that, here's an outcome, do what you can to get us towards that. We have these, like, designed by committee, and we have these collective checklists of, like, it has to do this, it has to do this. And we don't step back and just look at, okay, well, what are we really trying to accomplish?
Yeah. I think this topic, though, of systems thinking, and my focus is on product and product management, and it's not taught at all, and it's hugely important, right? Because if you think from a product perspective, you're building products. Let's say you live in a context, and that context is a system, and whether you think the system is the bigger application or product you're building, or something beyond, which it really is. It's the organism of the company plus all the external parties and how they interact. And I think people don't understand that. And they get, the flip side of it is the JIRA ticket, right? The JIRA ticket is like the antithesis of because it doesn't care. It doesn't care about the system. It's, hey, this is the micro context you need to focus on. And I think it takes you into a place where you may be doing something productive, but it's like the example from the video where you can't just take the best part from another car and just make it better. It's not going to help. The whole system won't improve. So.
But the JIRA ticket is connected to an epic, so it's very system relevant, right? No, I think that's a great point.
Does anyone care? Is there a visualization of how well that JIRA ticket really enhances that epic? Like,
well, the epic is like basically let's finish the backlog, right? Like, it's perfect. That's all you need.
I don't know.
The house thing reminded me of I think the first time that most people play a game like The Sims, where they have to design a house, they will do it based on that sort of like separate parts approach. Mm-hmm. Instead of the architecture approach of let's look at the footprint and then see what we can do. You see people with these houses, and I did this too when I started playing The Sims. You lay out, you're like, okay, I need a kitchen, and everything gets basically plotted based on the order you think about it, and they just get attached together. And then you'll have this long running hallway that connects everything together because it has to flow. And yet, and then the output, it looks like a storage facility, right? It doesn't look like a house at all. There's no real flow to it. It doesn't look like it was designed by a sane person. But I think that is how we kind of approach things by default, because we don't get this foundation of systems thinking and like, hold on a second, like step back and think about the outcome and the big picture.
And there's this element of, and I always find this very strange, especially in knowledge work, is this being allergic to the rework that's required to understand that, well, I need to go back. I might need to actually tear down this entire wing of the house. We don't do this now, but in order to actually improve the overall architecture, I might need to just completely throw away what I did before and start again from scratch. But we're very, very allergic to this idea that we have to completely rework this part of the system in order to actually be able to move forward. So we jump through hoops and do very illogical things in order to not have to rework parts of the system, rather than looking at the entire system context and thinking of things in what's best for the system as a whole as I start to make improvements.
So we've gone all this time and no one has mentioned the word flow, but
that corridor down the middle.
That was my corridor analogy. I was getting us there.
But no, but that's exactly it. Like you want to think about the house and there's the functional side of it. Yeah, you've got a bedroom, you've got a kitchen, you've got a dining room, etc. But you hear it in houses, right? How does it flow, right? How's the main floor flow? And I remember looking when we were searching for our house, and this house in particular, we found and we really liked it, but we saw so many houses where like it was kind of like your thing, your analogy of this kind of weird hallways and cutoffs and turns and the stairs in the wrong place, and like it's got all the parts, but boy, it doesn't work. So I had one question about this, right? So like if someone's watching us, hopefully some people are watching us. I mean,
we have one fan.
Where can they get more information on systems thinking? Like, where should they start?
Well, this is a great question. I think the famous go-to is Donella Meadows' book on systems thinking, the one with the slinky on the cover, which Peter, I'm sure, has.
Yeah, I do, of course.
And she did incredible work laying this out. This is kind of a staple book. Yeah, the Bible of systems thinking.
Yeah.
Unlike Peter, I have a real bookcase, so I won't.
You just need one green book that you can pull out and just gets replaced with whatever you're talking about.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, I have one book. Yeah.
It's like the Mary Poppins bag of a bookcase.
Okay.
But yeah, Russ Ackoff, I only discovered him, I think, and maybe even just 2020 must have been when I discovered Russ Ackoff, but really, really great stuff. Off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, since you have the book, I'm going to assume you read it, but maybe you didn't. But
I have read the book, yeah, and it is a really, really good book, and probably one of the better places to start with that. Although I mean, there's lots of other material out there. Obviously, the Fifth Discipline, and it's a shame that Chris isn't here to.
Oh man.
To cheer when we mention that, but obviously that would be another. Yeah, there you go. See, all about learning organization, but there's also a lot of stuff about systems thinking in there too. So that's another good resource.
Okay,
that's a great one. I forgot about the Fifth Discipline. I shouldn't say this on a recorded platform. Jeez, Chris will kill me.
Insider jokes.
Yes.
So one other question I have in this it goes back to the video as well, right? Because like he the other example he gave is like, the hand can't write, right? It's the person that writes.
Yeah.
And the way you test it out is you cut off the hand and see what it can do on its own. So all these analogies like cars, you can get human body, you can get. But when it comes to business processes and systems, it's a lot harder to decompose them into a hand or a spark plug or whatever, right? Because they don't have the same individual functional capabilities the way physical things do. So what would be a way for people to start trying to think about the parts in the context of the whole?
This is a really great question. Saeed, you're making for a really good facilitator of these. Good questions.
I
The
can ask
one
questions,
that
I can't answer.
oh, we'll get to you. The one thing that I've been spending a lot of time on recently is value chain mapping or Wardley mapping. Because even though it's kind of like a static representation of the organization, because it does have a structure to it, it's more than just a mind map of all the things that could be connected together. It shows where they're sort of plotted, especially in relation to customers, which I think is really important to a business. I think that hanging things off of a customer is really valuable in a business. And if you're thinking using a model that where the customer is not there, you're probably going to struggle, and you're probably going to miss something. So that's a big reason why I like value streams as a model, as a frame for creating this reference or visualizing the system. But a value stream is very, very simplified on purpose. Something like a value chain map, I think, is a more complete visualization of an organization level arrangement of system pieces.
It's more dependency based, and it tends to go at a different level of granularity than the value stream. I would agree that's a great way of looking at it from what is the thing that you're delivering that is the value, and then tracing back from there. What does it take me to deliver that? And then what does it take me to deliver that piece that delivers that? And then what does it take me to deliver that piece that delivers that? And that builds up your value chain to get this sequence, right? Which is, these are the component pieces I need to care about. And then that's, of course, of infinite depth to type break down into like, well, okay, what are the things that then make up those? And what are the dependencies? And where do I need to focus in all of this?
So Saeed, from a product perspective, you mentioned that this is not something that you see or hear about a lot in product circles, but is that changing in specific spaces, or do you see it moving in that direction? I know that the domain-driven space, like domain-driven design, is kind of thinking more systematically, but I wonder if it's happening elsewhere.
So I'll be honest with you, I don't really have data on it. I sort of see kind of anecdotal evidence of it here and there. The one area I would think that it is improving. So, I mean, so there's two problems, right? One is this systems thinking happening, but it has to happen in a context, right? And unfortunately, a lot of product managers and product teams don't work in a broader context. They work in silos. And they're very, like Jira ticket focus, right? Hey, we're gonna work and ship things. These mantras like always be shipping. Well, to what end, right? I think that's one part of the problem. The other one is, if you do have a larger scope of responsibility or a larger sort of viewpoint on things, do you actually have the ability to impact the change, right? So, my view is product management is a change agent in companies. It should be. And you are not just looking at product, you're looking across the organization. So once you get to that level and have that responsibility, you have to think systematically. You have to think about the flow of information, the flow of decisions, and how people are going to act. Because what you do today, is going to help people 6 months from now, right? That in what comes out of whatever you're doing. I think one area where it might be improving, but again, I think it depends on context, is because of product analytics in SaaS applications particularly, people are looking at data, and they're looking at customer and user flow. And then they're integrating that with other data systems in companies, right? So CRM data, sales data, financial data, whatever. And my assumption is that more integrated view gives them a more systems kind of perspective, that it's not just about did they onboard properly, but of the people we're bringing in, and the deal flow and whatever, not only are they onboarding, but how are they working throughout the product over a period of time. So I'm going to say that's my hypothesis. I don't know if it's true or not.
I think that's awesome. And it's a great way to wrap up today too. So we're out of time for the day. I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation, and yeah, join us next time. And so thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.